At the will reading, she smiled and said my father left me nothing she didn't know. He'd hidden a second will naming me the sole heir, and I brought it to her press conference. They say grief comes in waves. Mine came with a smile, hers not mine. I always thought the day I lost my father would be the worst of my life. I was wrong. The real pain didn't come when they lowered his casket into the ground. It came 2 hours later when my stepmother stood in his study, still in her designer funeral dress, and calmly announced that she now owned everything he built. The house, the company, his legacy, all of it. Everyone else just nodded like this had always been the plan. I remember standing in that room still holding the crumpled tissue from the service, wondering if I had slipped into some alternate version of my life. I hadn't even changed clothes. I hadn't cried. I hadn't breathed. And somehow, I had already lost more than just my father. Claire stood like a queen accepting her crown. Ellis left everything in my care, she said, hand pressed to her heart. He didn't want Lena burdened with the business. Lena, that's me. And in that moment, something inside me split clean open. Burdened, that's what she called it now. 3 years, I worked beside my father. I canceled holidays, slept in airports, handled clients, while Claire sunbathed and ordered custom linens. He wasn't burdening me, he was building me, training me to lead. But Claire didn't want someone to inherit his trust. She wanted the whole damn empire. And now that he was gone, she was taking it. One rehearsed line at a time. She had documents too. Signed, dated, presented in a monogrammed leather folder like a performance prop. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked low and steady, "When did he sign those?" She didn't flinch. 2 weeks before he passed, she said, rehearsed and polished. We discussed everything. He was very clear, funny. 2 weeks before he died, he had dinner with me. Told me I was close, that I had earned it, that he was proud. He smiled that night. And now, here she was rewriting everything, rewriting him. The others stayed silent. Cousins, board members, no one met my eye. That was the sound of people choosing sides. And I was already losing. The lawyer started reading, stock transfers, estate control, full executive rights, all in her name. I heard every word, but none of it felt real. Then something echoed in my memory, a whisper from the hospital, my father's voice. "Don't trust her, she'll make her move. But don't be afraid, I've made arrangements." At the time, I thought he was slipping, confused. But now it didn't sound like fear. It sounded like strategy, like he'd seen this coming and left me breadcrumbs. I looked at Claire again. She was smiling like the crown had always been hers. She thought she had won. And maybe she had, for now. But if what my father said was true, if he really had made arrangements, then this wasn't over. Not even close. I looked her straight in the eye and smiled back. Just a little. The kind of smile that doesn't say I give up. The kind that says I see you. And in that moment, I made myself a silent final promise I was going to find out exactly what she'd done. And I was going to burn it all down. She used to call me sweetheart when my dad was around, always with a soft voice, a tilted head, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. And I used to smile back because I thought that's what daughters were supposed to do with their stepmothers, smile, nod, stay civil. But I knew, I always knew. Claire didn't marry my father because she loved him. She married him because he was powerful. When they met, she was head of PR for one of our partner firms, smart, beautiful, ambitious, and 10 years younger than him. She played it well, the slow seduction, the chance meetings, the innocent admiration. My father, who hadn't dated anyone since my mother left, never stood a chance. I was 21 when he married her. I remember standing at the back of the wedding tent in a pale blue dress, watching her walk down the aisle in a gown that cost more than my tuition. Everyone said it was a fairy tale. I thought it was a transaction. She moved into our house within weeks, replaced the furniture within months, and started attending board meetings before their first anniversary. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just jealous, protective. Maybe I didn't want to share my father. But then I started noticing the way she spoke for him in meetings, the way she answered his phone, the way she'd dismiss my questions about the business with phrases like, "That's not your concern, Lena." Or worse, "Let the grown-ups handle it." I was 24 and managing 2 divisions. But to her, I was still the inconvenient daughter. The one thing Claire couldn't control, though, was how close I was with my dad. We had history, trust, quiet rituals. Every Sunday morning before she even woke up, we'd meet in his study with coffee and go over the company's performance. He'd quiz me, challenge me, explain things twice when I didn't understand. He was hard on me because he believed in me. But slowly I started seeing cracks. One Sunday I came down early and found the door to the study locked. That had never happened before. Another time I overheard Claire telling the CFO to reroute a budget approval when technically she had no authority to do that. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "Ellis gave me full proxy rights last quarter. You should read the memos more carefully, darling. She was always polite when she was stabbing you." I told my father. I asked if it was true. He looked tired, conflicted, older than usual. "She's just helping," he said. "It's easier sometimes." That's when I realized he wasn't defending her. He was resigned. Claire wasn't just taking over his time. She was draining his energy. One tiny concession at a time. But the worst moment came 6 months before he died. We were having lunch, just the two of us. He looked pale, distant. I asked him if he was okay. He said he was just tired. Then out of nowhere he said, "If anything happens to me, Lena, I need you to be strong." I remember laughing it off. I said, "Dad, stop. Nothing's going to happen." He didn't smile. He just looked at me with eyes that were suddenly glassy. And he said, "Promise me. You'll protect what matters." I nodded. But I didn't know what he meant. Not until now. Not until I watched Claire at his funeral calmly redistribute everything he'd built as if it were part of a quarterly sale. Not until I saw the smirk she gave me when I questioned her version of the truth. A smirk that said I already won. And you don't even know how. But here's the thing about people like Claire, they're good at playing the long game. But they're even better at underestimating the people they step on to get ahead. And somewhere inside me, something had shifted. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was watching, learning, waiting. Because if my father really had made arrangements, as he'd said, then he left more than just memories behind. He left a trail, a breadcrumb I hadn't found yet. And Claire had no idea I was about to follow it. For the next 2 days, I barely slept. I wandered through the house like a ghost watching strangers carry out boxes, lawyers shuffle papers, and Claire glide from room to room like she'd always owned it. She'd started referring to everything as hers, her office, her staff, her company. I kept waiting for someone to stop her, for anyone to say, "This isn't right." But no one did. So I stopped waiting. And I started remembering. The phrase kept echoing in my head like a warning I hadn't taken seriously enough. "Don't be afraid. I've made arrangements." It wasn't just something he said to comfort me. It was specific, intentional. And now I was finally listening. So I went back to his study, the one Claire had claimed as her new workspace. Only this time I waited until everyone had left the house. Midnight, rain falling softly outside. No footsteps, no excuses. I had grown up in this room. I knew every inch of it. I ran my fingers along the edge of his old desk, opened the drawers one by one. Claire had already removed most of his things, but she hadn't removed memory. The bottom drawer stuck a little. It always had. I reached under the panel, felt around for the small latch I hadn't touched since I was 17. Click, there it was, a false bottom. Inside a small leather-bound notebook, a safety deposit key, and a sealed envelope. My breath caught. The envelope had my name on it. Just one word written in his handwriting, Lena. I sat down slowly, hands shaking as I opened it. "My dearest Lena, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if I'm gone, I need you to understand something very clearly. Claire will try to take everything. She's smart, calculating, and she knows how to make people trust her. But she doesn't care about the company. Not really. She cares about control. I should have acted sooner. I should have told you more. But part of me kept hoping she'd change. She didn't. So I've done what I should have done years ago. You'll find a copy of my final will in the safety deposit box. The key is enclosed. This version names you as the sole beneficiary, not just of the company, but of all my assets, shares, and properties. I've already signed the transition documents. They're dated and notarized. They're airtight. Claire doesn't know they exist. You are the future of Rourke Industries, Lena. Not because you're my daughter, but because you've earned it. You see the company not as a kingdom, but as a responsibility. That's why I trust you. You'll face resistance. People will doubt you, Claire will fight you, but you are not alone. I've left instructions with someone I trust, someone who knows how to help if things go south. You'll know who to call when the time comes. I love you. Always. Dad. I read the letter 3 times before I could breathe again. It wasn't just relief, it was rage. Rage that he knew this would happen. Rage that he didn't stop her sooner. Rage that I hadn't realized until it was almost too late. But most of all, it was fuel. He had prepared for this. Quietly, carefully. Claire thought she had everything wrapped up. She didn't even know she was sitting on a lie. The next morning, I drove across the city in silence, the key clenched in my hand like a lifeline. The bank opened at 8 a.m. sharp. I was already waiting. The clerk guided me to the vault, barely glancing at the name on the box. When I unlocked it, I felt the weight of everything inside before I even looked. 2 thick files, legal documents, notarized signatures, the revised will, and another envelope, this one addressed to a name I hadn't heard in years. Lucas Sinclair. My heart skipped. Lucas had been my father's closest business partner, almost like an uncle to me growing up. But then suddenly he was gone. One day he just disappeared from the company. My father never explained why, until now. He wasn't gone. He'd been cut out, probably by Claire. And now my father wanted me to find him. Because Lucas was the someone in the letter, the one he trusted. I closed the box, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the vault with a quiet fire burning in my chest. This wasn't over. Claire thought she'd buried every piece of my father's legacy with him. She thought I was too broken to fight back, but she was wrong. I had the will, I had the documents, and now I had a name. Lucas Sinclair. It was time to make a call. I didn't call him right away. I stared at his name on the envelope for a full hour before I touched my phone. Lucas Sinclair. My father's closest ally, the man Claire had erased from the company without a trace. Now I knew why. She couldn't control him, and my father. He knew Lucas would be the one person she'd never be able to manipulate. When I finally called, it took 3 rings before he answered. Lucas speaking. His voice was deeper than I remembered. Calm, controlled, not surprised. "This is Lena," I said. "Lena Rourke." A beat of silence. Then I was wondering when you'd call. We met that night. Quiet rooftop lounge, financial district. No press, no noise. Just the hum of distant traffic and the tension of unfinished business. He looked older, sharper. His hair was gray now, but his eyes were the same ice blue and impossible to read. I handed him the envelope without a word. He opened it slowly, scanning the letter inside. His expression shifted just slightly. "I told him this day would come," he said. "You knew she'd try to take everything I asked." Lucas looked at me. "She didn't try. She did. You're here because she succeeded." I stiffened. But he raised a hand. "That's not an insult. That's reality." Claire didn't step into a role. She orchestrated a takeover. Quiet. Strategic. And for now, legal. "Not for long," I said. He smiled. Not kindly. "You've got fire. Good. But fire without direction burns out fast. You want to take back Rourke Industries. You'll need more than a will. You'll need strategy, allies, timing. I have the documents, the real will. Her version's a fake." Lucas nodded. "Then you have leverage. But leverage means nothing if you use it too soon." This wasn't going to be a dramatic boardroom reveal. This was going to be a build. Quiet, strategic, patient. Back at the house, Claire was in full queen mode. She'd moved into my father's study, repainted the walls, started calling senior leadership her team. She fired 3 longtime execs and replaced them with hand-picked loyalists. People who wouldn't question. People who owed her. I played along. I wore grief-like armor, nodded when she spoke, acted smaller than I was. Meanwhile, Lucas and I were building what he called the shadow case. We followed the money, flagged financial anomalies, found payments routed through consulting firms tied to Claire's college roommate. Properties shifted into LLCs with no listed employees. Personal luxuries labeled as strategy expenses. She wasn't just trying to run the company, she was gutting it. Fast. "She's accelerating," Lucas said. "She knows something's off. Your silence makes her nervous. Good. Let her feel it." We started talking to investors. Quietly, carefully, not a smear campaign, just proof. Documents. Voice transcripts, patterns she thought were invisible. And slowly the tide shifted. Claire began to unravel. First it was small snapping at an assistant fumbling in meetings. Then came the rumors that the books weren't clean, that Claire had buried the original will, that Ellis Rourke had never intended for her to lead. She tried to cover it with charm, smiles, bravado. But behind her eyes, panic. Because power built on lies has a sound when it starts to crack. And I was letting her hear it, one hairline fracture at a time. The night before our move, Lucas looked at me across the table, blueprints and files between us. "You'll only get one clean shot," he said. I didn't blink. "Then I'll make it count." He nodded. "You ready to win?" I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just said, "I'm not here to win. I'm here to finish what she started." I didn't want to do it like this. When I pictured reclaiming what was mine, I saw lawyers close doors, final signatures. Something quiet, surgical. Not a ballroom filled with photographers. Not Claire in red standing under a spotlight pretending my father's company was hers to sell. But she forced my hand. She called it a landmark announcement, rented out a luxury hotel, invited shareholders, influencers, media, even a few minor celebrities. She was performing for the world, for herself, for the illusion of control. And I was 3 rows back, uninvited, unnoticed, just the daughter in black. She took the stage like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. Her voice was perfect polish, dripping with curated power. "Today marks a new chapter for Rourke Industries. We are proud to announce our partnership with Altaris Global." Applause followed. Camera flashes, head nods, but I didn't clap. Because I knew exactly who Altaris was, a foreign investment group, known for gutting legacy companies and flipping them for profit. Claire wasn't saving the company, she was selling it. And that's when I stood up. People turned, some whispered. Claire faltered just slightly, then recovered with a smile that was all veneer. "Lena," she said sweetly, "I didn't realize you were here. You didn't invite me," I replied, stepping into the aisle. "But that's all right. I brought something better." I reached into my bag and pulled out the leather folder, the real one, stamped with my father's seal. Claire's smile twitched. "This is the will," I said, "the actual one. Signed, notarized, and dated after yours." There was a pause just long enough for the room to start listening. I handed the folder to a senior investor in the front row. He scanned the first page, passed it to the next person, and then the next. By the time the third signature circled around, the applause had stopped completely. "According to this," someone said, "Lena owns the company. All of it. Effective immediately," I added. "As per my father's final wishes." Claire tried to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. And just in case anyone's wondering, I continued, "We've also uncovered misuse of funds, unauthorized transfers, and an attempted sale of controlling interest to a company my father explicitly rejected." Claire snapped. "This is slander. Lena has always been unstable. She doesn't understand the pressures of leadership." Behind her, the projection screen blinked on. Emails, bank records, wire transfers, all with her name, all time-stamped, all real. Someone at the back exhaled audibly. "Jesus Christ," they muttered. Claire's face went pale, her hands shook. "He wanted me to lead," she said, almost begging now. "He told me he wanted loyalty," I said, my voice steady. "You wanted control." That was the last thing I said before security escorted her out. Not arrested, not yet, but broken, cornered, humiliated. And for a moment I thought that would feel like victory, but it didn't. Later that night, Lucas and I sat in the top-floor conference room. The city blinked outside the window glass, and steel, and silence. He handed me a drink. "You did it," he said. But I didn't smile. I stared down at the whiskey. "Not yet," I replied. He raised an eyebrow. "She's gone. She's finished." I shook my head slowly. "She's not gone. She's furious. That's not finished." I looked out the window. "That's just phase 2. I thought taking her down would feel like closure. It didn't. It felt like pulling the pin on a grenade, then standing in the smoke, waiting for the explosion. The next morning, the headlines exploded. "Stepdaughter outsmarts. Stepmother in live corporate coup." "Too young, too cold," investors split over Rourke heiress's public takedown. I hadn't even stepped into the building yet, and I was already trending. Some called me brilliant. Some called me ruthless. But the only thing that mattered, the board, wasn't calling me anything at all. They were silent. And in my world, silence is never neutral. Silence is strategy. By noon, 3 key investors called emergency meetings. By 3 p.m., I was summoned to a closed-door update session with the board. By 4:30, I realized Claire hadn't lost, she'd simply moved the war underground. She wasn't on stage anymore, she was behind doors whispering. Mr. Kessler, board chairman, spoke first. Miss Rourke, we commend your initiative, but we're concerned about the tone of yesterday's event. Tone, not embezzlement, not betrayal. Tone. Some investors are questioning whether this leadership style is sustainable. Translation: You embarrassed one of us. Now we're nervous. I kept my voice steady. She tried to sell the company behind your backs. That's not drama, that's exposure. Another member leaned forward. It's not what you said, Lena. It's how it looked. And there it was, optics. I'd brought proof, but Claire had brought a better story. One where she was the misunderstood executive. And I was just a vengeful girl who didn't understand pressure. And the worst part, people were starting to believe her. Later, the PR team sat me down. You need to soften your image, they said. You come off too cold, too calculated. I looked at the words on the screen. Ice Queen, robotic, unstable. Funny. When Claire was in charge, they called that poised. Lucas texted me one word that night: expected. The next morning, the stock dipped 4%. Not enough to wound the company, but enough to open a wound in perception. The board felt it. The media ran with it. And Claire, she had done exactly what I hadn't. She made herself the victim. Suddenly, the whispers returned. She's not ready. She's too emotional. She's cracking. And the truth, I wasn't cracking. But I was learning what they don't teach you about power. It's not what you have in your hands. It's what people believe you deserve to hold. And Claire had planted just enough doubt to make me dangerous to myself. That night, I sat in my office, the same one where my father built everything. But it didn't feel like a throne. It felt like a trap. Cold, quiet, glass beneath my feet. I opened the bottom drawer, pulled out the last note he left me. I'd read it a dozen times. But this time, one line hit different. I didn't leave you alone. I left you with the tools to win. That's when I called Lucas. 15 minutes later, he walked in without knocking. I have something, he said. And he did. A flash drive, surveillance footage, audio files, text messages between Claire and a PR consultant, time-stamped before her public event, conversations about framing me, about undermining me, about making sure, no matter what I said, I'd look unstable. Lucas didn't smile. He didn't have to. She's not just playing dirty, he said. She's playing predictable. And that's when the shift happened. Not outside. Inside me. I stopped wondering if I deserved the seat. I stopped waiting for approval. Because now I knew Claire didn't lose because I beat her. She lost because I let her build her own trap. All I did was wait. Next time I walked into that boardroom, I wouldn't be fighting for a seat. I'd be expected. Not because I demanded it, but because I made it inevitable. No one throws you a parade for surviving a scandal. There were no congratulations, no warm welcomes. Just a cold boardroom, a skeptical staff, and a company hanging on by its last thread of credibility. I didn't walk in as a hero. I walked in as a question mark. Half the executive team avoided eye contact. The other half offered friendly advice that came dressed like support but smelled like doubt. Maybe delay the restructure until you've got more experience. Let the CFO handle media. Don't expose yourself too much. Expose myself. Since when was competence something to hide? So I did the one thing Claire never could. I listened. I spent the first 10 days meeting with every department head. No titles, no PR cameras, just one-on-one conversations, door closed, guard down. I asked what was broken, what was barely working, what they would change if they weren't afraid of the person sitting across from them. And when they realized I wasn't there to posture, they started telling the truth. Operations was bloated. Product development was safe and stale. Marketing was reactive, not strategic. And morale lower than anyone dared admit to Claire. They didn't want flash. They didn't want slogans. They wanted direction. So that's what I gave them. We cut half of Claire's vanity contracts, reinstated 2 senior managers she'd buried, poured funding back into R&D, and restructured marketing around our actual values, not whatever trend was hot on LinkedIn that week. And then I made a move that surprised them all. I reopened the internship pipeline. Not because it looked good, but because it mattered. My father used to say, "We don't just sell products, we grow thinkers." Claire had erased that line from our mission doc. I put it back. The media didn't care, not at first. They were too busy writing about my Ice Queen expressions during board meetings, or the fact that I hadn't posted on Instagram since the takeover. But numbers don't need filters, and numbers don't lie. By the end of Q2, employee satisfaction was up 22%. Client churn dropped. Our revenue curve didn't spike, but it stopped shaking. The stock didn't just stabilize. It grew, slowly, quietly, like something that knew it wasn't here to impress. It was here to last. One night past 1 a.m., I was in my father's old office reviewing logistics reports. I found a folder in the back of the filing drawer, his handwriting, Q3 notes, budget scribbles, an old org chart, and at the bottom a line written in ink I recognized: "Don't build what impresses them. Build what outlasts them." I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just kept reading. Because I finally understood taking the company back was one thing, but building it forward, that was the real win. By the end of month 3, people stopped waiting for me to prove myself. They started pitching ideas, not because of my name, not because of what I'd done to Claire, but because of how I led when no one was watching. Lucas came by that week. He stood in the doorway as I hung up a call, watching me the way only someone who's seen your worst version can. "You're not the same person you were 3 months ago," he said. "Good," I replied. He tilted his head. "What changed you?" I didn't even hesitate, realizing I didn't need to become her to beat her. The truth was simple. Claire had tried to dominate through noise. I was rebuilding through clarity. By fiscal year end, we weren't just surviving, we were turning. Internally, the staff called it the quiet turn. No drama, no firework launches, just work that finally meant something again. Fewer consultants, more communication, fewer slogans, more substance. People stayed late not out of fear, but because they wanted to. Laughter returned to break rooms. Initiative returned to meetings. And I stopped trying to live up to my father's legacy. Because I realized I wasn't restoring what he built. I was building what comes next. 1 year later, I changed the nameplate on the office door. Not mine, my father's. His name had always been there in gold lettering: Ellis Rourke, founder and CEO. Even after he died, I couldn't bring myself to remove it. It felt like touching it would erase him. But now it felt different. Now I wasn't holding on to the past. I was carrying it forward. The new plaque reads, "The Rourke Floor," in honor of the legacy that built us, and the future that will outlast us. We didn't hold a press event. No speech, no camera crew. Just a quiet unveiling. A few employees clapped. Someone whispered, "About time." That was enough. That evening, I stood by the window watching the city soften under golden light. 12 floors below, a new intern was confidently leading a product demo. Across the building, our lead engineer was testing a prototype that didn't exist 6 months ago. The company wasn't just moving, it was evolving. Not fast, not loud, but forward. Claire was gone. Her media allies, her back-channel board friends. Her entire noise machine, gone with her. She had filed one final civil suit for wrongful dismissal. It didn't survive a single hearing. Because Lucas was right all along, Claire wasn't built for longevity. She was built for attention. And loud doesn't last. It echoes, then vanishes. My mother called last week. We hadn't spoken in years. She said she saw a clip of my keynote at the Innovation Summit. Said I looked strong, different. I told her thank you. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. Some wounds don't ask for closure. They just need distance. A new executive joined us last month. Sharp, thoughtful. Reminds me of a version of myself if I had met me now. After her first team meeting, she stepped into my office and said, "They don't just respect you, they believe you." That stuck with me because for a long time I thought leadership was about proving you belong, explaining your value, demanding to be heard. But real power, it's when no one questions why you're in the room. It's the silence after certainty, the kind that doesn't need to raise its voice. I'm not haunted by Claire anymore. I don't flinch at late-night emails. I don't lie awake wondering what her next move will be. Because I already did the one thing she never could. I built something that doesn't revolve around one person. Something that outlasts ego, outperforms legacy, outgrows revenge. People sometimes ask me what it felt like taking her down. The truth, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like removing a splinter. Small, precise, necessary. And then, peace. There's only one photo on my desk now. It's not me holding a trophy. Not the night I reclaimed the company. It's me and my father Sunday morning coffee between us, spreadsheets everywhere. He's laughing. I'm scribbling notes. No legacy, no empire. Just two people who understood each other better in silence than 100 board meetings ever could. And sometimes when the building goes still and the elevator lights dim, and I'm the last one left on the Rourke floor, I sit in his chair, I close my eyes, and I whisper, "We're good, Dad. You can rest now." Because I'm not surviving anymore. I'm leading. And this time, no one's coming to take it from me.